In this asylum, I run the place. I love the look on your face. In this asylum, I wish you well. Cause I'll be standing at the gates of hell. We twisted thoughts of you and me, mixed with twisted imagery. Toxic love affair, and toxic goddamn air.
Hey guys, and welcome to the American Ghost Hunter Show. This is our first show without Daryl, but don't worry, I've brought along Annie Weeble, who's going to be one of our first co-hosts. We're going to have a couple of people coming in to co-host with me while Daryl is away. I just want to say congratulations, Daryl. If you don't know why he's not here, it's because he's going to be in this amazing project thing. And he's leaving me, which isn't that nice. But never mind.
He's not leaving you permanently. And
it feels permanent.
It's not nearly as full as Daryl's. I really wanted to order a fake beard on like YouTube to have on there.
Well, you could have got like a bit of paper and drawn a beard on it and sort of just stuck it over your face.
I'm not artistic.
Well, it doesn't have to be perfect.
These are more than what they are. So, but I'm glad to be part of it. Thank you guys so much for having me on here.
Hey guys, if you're watching, let us know where you are from. We'll say hi. If you have any questions for our guests, feel free to ask them and we'll pass them on. Today on the show, we have the badass man, Calvin Von Crush. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, and I am looking forward to seeing some of the amazing items that you have. If you don't know, Calvin collects like some crazy occult haunted items, Ouija boards, you name it, he's got it. So I mean, we might as well kick things off, Calvin. When did you start collecting these objects?
I've had a lifelong interest in the paranormal and the occult, but I think I started taking it seriously about I must say 8 to 10 years ago. It's hard to really keep track of when it started.
Yeah. What was the first sort of things you started picking up then?
My first love is always going to be Ouija boards. Ouija boards is kind of everybody's gateway drug into the paranormal. And I got my first one at the age of 9, and it's been a love affair ever since.
Yeah.
9? What were your parents thinking? Seriously, Calvin, like, let's get him a Ouija board for Christmas or his birthday. Let's see how that works out for him.
I know, some parents prefer to get their child a gun.
It was Christmas?
Yeah, and the box says 8 and 0, so they waited a year.
That's great, though.
I can see you've got I can see you've got a nice collection. I can see you got a nice collection just behind you there.
Yeah, that's some of them. There's still a whole bucket upstairs with more.
What's your favorite?
Very good question. Let me go grab it for you and we can talk about it on screen.
Wicked.
Ooh. Can we do a demonstration? That would be a different sort of...
No, because people are going to start saying we're going to summon the devil and all that.
You see how my brain works here when you pick up a Ouija board.
Well, for anyone at home who doesn't know anything about me already, I don't believe in any of this stuff. To me, this is all, just as real as Game of Thrones. While we have real historical relics, I think that... What was that?
I said Game of Thrones is all real.
Oh, yeah, clearly. Yeah, I mean, these are real relics of history, but to me, anything involving the paranormal is all a psychological response, especially Ouija boards, and we should touch on that later if you guys like. But this one is my favorite, and if you notice, there's a little hole right here.
Yeah, so it's one of those art thingies.
Yeah, it's
I can't think of what they're called.
You're very correct. So this was created by a guy named Glenn Renner Smith, and he was a sign painter in Lilydale, New York. Lilydale is very close to Hydesville, New York, which is the birthplace of spiritualism, and essentially is the birth of modern ghost hunting in general. Mm-hmm. So in Lilydale, everybody believes they can speak to the dead, and I believe Glenn was no different, and he made this Ouija board out of a painter's palette that he had lying around.
It is cool. That is awesome. I like the fact that it's on an art
boss
thingy.
of Ouija boards over there who just picks up his favorite painters, you know, and was like, let's make this into something that can talk to the dead. Like, how does he decide that he's going to go from one extreme to the next?
Yeah, starts painting happy little spirits, right?
Right. I'm going to put a happy little spirit over here, and there's another happy little spirit over here. Like, how does that work?
I think it was just, spiritualism is very inclusive, so it was so many different people from walks of life, and he just happened to be a sign painter. I think he was a volunteer firefighter too, so he wore many hats. And this is from the 1930s. So if you think about the time period in the 1930s, it wasn't like we are nowadays where you just buy something and throw it out. It was a very make, do, and mend type of society. So he had the supplies lying around, and why not just make something better out of it?
Yeah, what we need to do is find a bit of wood lying around and make it look good, I guess. I mean,
Yeah,
Ouija boards do look good. I was just saying, Ouija boards do look good.
Yeah. Here, let me show you another example of make, do, and mend I have in my collection.
Wicked.
This collection behind you is so immense, and we have to talk at some point about how you have collected all these. This is crazy to me.
Alright, can you guys see what this one looks like? See how there's a little curve cut out of the bottom?
Oh yeah. Is that like a desk or something?
Yes.
Correct. That's exactly what this is. This is a textile desk that somebody took a Ouija board and turned it into a desk.
Okay.
So there's little, even on the back, they've made a little ruler for cutting fabric. Now, this is a very rare, expensive board. Like at auction, it goes for thousands of dollars. And whoever did this in the past never had any idea of what they were doing to such a priceless antique.
That's crazy. It's mental how some people don't realise what they actually have hold of in terms of like expensive, priceless Ouija boards, as an example.
Well, I mean, that probably cost them a nickel, and it was done, over 100 years ago.
So, I mean, while we're on the Ouija board subject, I mean, a lot of people say Ouija boards are evil and that you can summon demons and you're gonna like die and get really old and bad stuff's gonna happen to you. And I mean, has anything bad ever happened to you around your Ouija boards?
No, if anything, it gets me lots of attention, and I have to appear on podcasts and shows all the time.
Yeah. Don't you just hate them bastards? I had to think carefully about what word I was going to use then. I went to say a really bad one at first. Sorry. I'm English. We tend to use that word.
We edit our language for this one. No, so.
Well, we can swear. It's just the word I was going to use. We don't usually use because I wasn't thinking. And the funny thing is, Helena, my wife, I said to her before this show, I feel like I'm going to say or do something really bad. I almost just did. So, thank the Lord, if He exists. Well, again, I mean, that leads me to another thing I'd like to ask you about, Calvin. And I didn't actually realise this, although I feel like I should have. Me and Annie were talking before the show, and she said that you're an atheist.
I am. So happy Easter.
Yeah, we are celebrating the time that Jesus...
We talked about, I had you on my radio show, my live show last year, and I felt like when we just had an hour and we were just breaching the surface of the really deep conversation. And so we had talked at one point about spiritualism and how it plays into what we do in the paranormal world. So when you talk about your background that you had and spiritualism versus the skepticism of what we do, how do you mesh the two together?
So let's put it in a very, very easy who love the NFL but have never thrown a football in their life. You know? They aren't necessarily inclusive things that you have to be a football player to enjoy football. So when I first started getting involved with the paranormal, I very much believed. And just like many of the people listening and watching, they started out watching the TV shows, reading the books, sightings, unsolved mysteries, things like that. And even though I've come to the paranormal not really having much of a chance of it existing, it hasn't changed my love for it. So I know I don't believe in God, I don't believe in ghosts, I don't believe in, past lives, anything like that. But to me, it's still very thrilling to meet people who do believe they've experienced these things. And if we want to talk about the NFL again, the best way to see a football game is to go out there and watch it with the other fans. There's no way in hell I'm ever going to see a ghost if they are real, if I'm just sitting at home pounding a keyboard telling people they're wrong.
Which a lot of people tend to do.
Which I think is horrible, because even though I don't believe, I've still met so many amazing people through the process of learning more about the paranormal and trying to experience it myself. So I get why so many people do love ghost hunting and stuff like that. It's such a strong community. And I have friends on the other side of the world now just because of this.
I mean, one thing I do say to people, I have nothing against people that are skeptical, because as a paranormal investigator, you have to be skeptical. I am very skeptical about things. I'm always trying, if something happens that I can't explain straight away, I'm always trying to prove that it's perfectly normal and there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. However, I have experienced things as an investigator that I can't explain. For example, I've had stones thrown at me, even though I'm the only person in the room, and it's not like I'm in a room where, stones or bits of concrete or whatever might fall from the ceiling and fall on my head. This was thrown almost towards my temple. It hit sort of between my ear and my temple, sort of maybe just above my cheek, and there was no reason for that to happen. So I personally, as an investigator, say you only really truly start to believe in it when things happen that you can't physically explain. That's how I see it, anyway.
And I guess I think there's a part of me that hopes for that too, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, walking around an old abandoned prison at night is always going to be fun, whether it's haunted or not.
Oh yeah, one of the best things is basically you've rented a museum or some cool historical building at night, and it's all yours and no one else is there, so you can look around things in peace and quiet without any members of the public getting in your way. So
absolutely,
if there's no paranormal, if there's no ghost stuff going on, at least you got that. So going back to the Ouija boards again, obviously you're part of the Talking Board Historical Society. Is that right? Have I got it right?
Yes, sir. I'm
Yep.
one of the founding directors. We formed in 2013,
Mm-hmm.
and our mission is to preserve, document, and research the history involving Ouija and talking boards.
I think I know some of the people also on this. Obviously, I don't know if you saw it. Monday, we had Karen Darlam on the show doing a Ouija board session, which was fun. Got a lot of... she was doing readings for people, and we got a lot of cool stuff come through on the Ouija board. And at the same time, we had a lot of people on the chat saying that we were idiots for what we were doing and that we're going to summon the devil. But whatever. We didn't, just to clarify. And I was kind of disappointed. I kind of wanted him to appear.
I'm here now, Alex. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, you're not the devil. You're not the devil. She is.
How did you not see that?
So, I mean, you own them, so you must have used them properly.
Of course, and anybody who comes over is welcome to try them too. I've never gotten a board to work for me.
No.
But are you guys aware of the psychological response of how a Ouija board works? Do you guys know anything about that?
You and I have talked about it, but I would
Yeah,
like.
I'm clueless. I'm not very intelligent.
Yeah, Alex is smart, but I would like for you to kind of go into detail because I feel like it kind of leads into the next question that I have for you. So go ahead.
So I think one of the reasons that stops so many people involved in the paranormal from researching the Ouija board is they've heard so many things about them being evil, and it just throws up a roadblock.
One quick question.
All you have.
So one quick question. Would you say that started with The Exorcist?
It started well before that, believe it or not, but The
Okay.
Exorcist is a major culprit in convincing people that Ouija boards are evil. So you are right there.
Mm-hmm.
But man, even from the start, there were some people who were saying it was a horrible thing. There's a number of murders that have been linked to the Ouija board's use. There was a whole town that was essentially on lockdown and was trying to ban Ouija boards.
I suppose if you've got a heavy enough one and you use enough force, you can kill someone with one.
Oh, I've got ones in my collection big enough to kill a man with.
Well, there you go.
And if I ever do, they go up in value.
Good point. Especially if you kill someone famous.
So the main reason why Ouija boards have been popular for well over 100 years is because they really do move on their own. It is not a myth. Ouija boards do move, but it is a psychological response that has nothing to do with spirits. It's something called the ideomotor effect. So if people
just to clarify, this is obviously your opinion.
No, this is fact. This is scientific fact.
Okay.
This is not an opinion at all. It's been researched by many institutions, and it's very, very easy to look this up online and see demonstrations. We've actually had a conference called WouijaCon where we had a group of people come from Denmark, and they had a scientific experiment where they put glasses on people that tracked their eyeball movement. Whenever the Ouija board would move, it always showed that their eyeballs were going to the letter first. Two blind people playing with a Ouija board cannot produce legible results. You need your eyes in order to use it. It is not a spirit producing those responses. It's the individuals using the Ouija board.
Okay.
Here's my problem with Ouija boards. You and I talked about this on the live show that I did last fall with you. When you talk about Ouija boards, you're talking about human interaction. You're talking about humans placing their hands on these planchettes and asking questions. And so you're talking about this ideomotor response.
Yes, ma'am.
The human brain wants to connect patterns in things. You know, we call it matrixing when you're looking at pictures.
One of my pet hates, that is.
Matrixing?
Or pareidolia, or whatever you want to call it.
Right. So you're talking about matrixing. You're looking at something and you're finding patterns in it. You're hearing something, you're finding patterns in it. You're looking at a black cat, which is always evil in and of itself, but I love them so much. And so when we talk about something like that and the ideomotor response with Ouija boards, when someone sits down at a Ouija board to do a paranormal investigation, when they're trying to contact something that is not of this world, how much of that do you think is actually spirit? How much do you think is human interaction responding to what they want to happen?
0% spirit, 100% the person.
Okay, and why?
Like I've just said, it's been scientifically tested more than once. If you were blind, you're not going to be able to use a Ouija board. You're not going to. It's not going to. You might as well put it on Candyland.
I think with the Ouija board, I think it depends on the person using them. I think they don't work for some people. I mean, I've used it many times, and
it's worked for you, Alex?
Once. It's only ever worked once, and I think.
You yourself or with a partner?
Well, it was with 2 other people, and we got this message come through that none of us understood. I I won't say what locations it's at, but we had a person that used to work at this museum come through and talk to us, and he wouldn't tell us his name, but we were like, but obviously there was someone from the museum there to look after us for the night, so he said, but what do we say, how do we prove that you're real? And he said, tell the person, I can't remember the exact wording, this was like 10 years ago nearly, but basically he told us to tell the person that was with us that it's the gay guy that used to work at the museum that died on such and such date. And we're like, right, okay. So at the end of the night, we went over to the guy who worked at the museum and we said, we got this really weird message come through on a Ouija board, and this doesn't usually happen, but basically the guy that used to work here who died last year came through and he said that he's gay, and that was the way where we could prove it to you. And the guy was like, yeah, there was a gay guy who worked here that died last year. And we were like, okay, that's a bit mental. And there was no reason for any of us to know. Like, we wouldn't have gone up to the guy and said, so, anyone die recently? None of us knew anything about it. And basically that was the only time that I've really used a Ouija board where it said something that I've been able to prove straight away.
So do you think when you use the Ouija board to communicate with whatever spirit you were talking to, a lot of us go into these investigations and we use different types of equipment. We use digital voice recorders. We use, different types of light sources that sense, whether it's static electricity or whatever. Do you think that was just a way for that person to connect with you? Like, here's my thing.
I honestly have no idea. I mean, like I said, I'm not that in touch with, spirituality and things like that. The only reason why I'm lucky enough to see them every now and then is because I live with a medium. And like I said, I am super skeptical. I am not a fan of orbs.
So, Alex,
and usually, if stuff comes through, if we're doing a Ouija board session, and it's with people, I usually kind of poo-poo it. Poo-poo. I usually just think, yeah, whatever, But that was the only time, and I don't know how many times I've used a Ouija board, loads of times, but that was the only time where anything that's ever come through was proven. And it was proven basically straight away, more or less.
I don't think just having one fact about somebody's sexuality counts as prove it.
Well, I just find it's an odd thing. It's an odd thing to come through. It's not like it's really an obscure fact about someone.
If the ghost was gay or straight.
Obviously it doesn't matter. Just I don't care whether someone's gay or straight. But also another thing, it was actually not many people knew, but for some reason the guy with us at the time knew that this guy was gay. I get a feeling he was quite an older gentleman. And there was actually, last time we went to this museum, there was actually a bent there in this guy's memory. So we actually found out who he actually was, his name and stuff. So that was pretty cool.
I think that's more of a lucky guess, especially if you've got 3 people playing. So when you have 3 people playing, you have 3 different idiomotor effects competing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys ever heard of Zozo?
Yeah.
So Zozo is one of the easiest ways to identify that it's the idiomotor effect taking place.
Well, I don't believe in Zozo anyway.
Oh, on opposite sides of the... What's that?
I don't believe in the Zozo anyway.
Correct, and you shouldn't, because Zozo is just a product of the idiomotor effect.
Okay. I mean, like I said, I'm skeptical. I'm not very big on demons and things like that. I mean, if demons do exist, I don't necessarily think they're, the devil's minions and they've come up from hell, you know, dressed in red pajamas and they're like possessing people and blah 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 blah. I don't necessarily believe in that, but you know, I think I'm open-minded. I'm not an atheist. I'm an agnostic, if anything.
You should read more about that ideomotor effect, though, because it works on so many things involved in the paranormal. It works on pendulums. It works on dowsing rods.
I mean, I can see the pendulum and dowsing rod thing. It's maybe just people that tend to get positive answers. Maybe it's just like a lucky shot, I guess.
I've heard the dowsing rods before. Dowsing rods, pendulums, Ouija boards, whatever you're talking about. When there is the opportunity to put the human factor into it, then you're talking about the ideomotor effect. You know, we can put whatever we feel like into that sort of thing. And that's why when I've used pendulums and dowsing rods before, I kind of have to push that off to the side and say that's not something that I fully 100% believe in, because there's the human factor there. There's the ability to put your own factor into that. You are basically manipulating something on your own. And so if that's a Ouija board, if it's dowsing rods, if it's a pendulum, you always, when you're talking about those types of instruments, you have the effect to, or you have the ability to affect those on your own. And so I've never been a fan of using those because, you know, I work in the medical field. I'm not somebody who's going to step into something and automatically assume that it is the paranormal stepping in there. I want to have the ability to rule out all scientific aspects at first, Ouija boards included, pendulums, all that kind of stuff, because we have the ability to manipulate that whether we know it or not. Your brain attempts to matrix, and when I say matrix, we're talking about finding patterns in things. Matrixing means finding patterns. And so your brain is going to do that automatically. If you look at a Rorschach, you know, the psychological test, the Rorschach. The Rorschach was the ability to look at a painting and find some type of figure in it, some type of scientific fact in that. And I feel like when we use Ouija boards and things of that nature, our brain is trying to Rorschach those situations.
Joe, I'm so glad that I am presenting this show with someone with intelligence for once, because if Daryl was trying to pronounce that, he would have probably said horse shart. And so probably will I, so I will not attempt to say such word.
But it's true, right?
Yeah. I mean, some people see some really weird things in those, and all I ever think is like, well, it just looks like someone spilt their ink. I don't see anything other than that.
But your brain attempts to find the patterns.
That or a butterfly, maybe. That's what they always look like. It just looks like ink or butterflies.
Calvin, when we talk about these sorts of things, how often do you see that type of Rorschach ability come into the things that you have researched in this?
So, talking about psychology in the paranormal, there's something called confirmation bias. And I think that's pretty similar to what you're talking about with matrixing, is when people go into a haunted location, they're looking for evidence to support that it's haunted. They're not looking for evidence, period, if that makes sense.
Right.
So anything abnormal that they identify, they're going to lead it to, this place is haunted, here's why, and they'll show that. Versus, hey, this is what happened at this location. We can't determine exactly what it was, but we need to be here more. So let's talk about how paranormal investigations work in general. You get a bunch of people going to a place for one night, once a month, trying to identify things. If a place was truly haunted and we could truly prove to the world that there were ghosts there, why not focus all of our time, all of our money, and all of our energy into finding that one place that is supposedly the most haunted in the world and putting it under 100% full surveillance?
Here's the thing. Ghost hunting, unfortunately, doesn't seem to work like that.
Right. Now, Alex,
It doesn't.
it's a lot of it is evidence hoarding and secrets and special events and ticket costs, which have become what modern paranormal investigation is. And I think that's actually a detriment to the actual scientific aspect. It makes it more of a theme park than it does an experiment.
Well, here's the thing. For me, the paranormal is not about making money. Although, please buy the American Ghost Hunter t-shirts, people. It's not about making money. I'm only kidding. But do buy them. Because I've never made money out of doing this. I mean, for me, it's an enjoyment. I enjoy the paranormal thing, so, the paranormal investigating and things like that. But I believe in it, like I said, but I'm very skeptical. I always try and disprove something, no matter what. And you're right. A lot of things in this industry are purely based around money, and it is a circus. Obviously, I'm not having a go at anyone, but I feel
like I said,
people just sort of lose touch with what paranormal investigation is actually about.
what is it about to you, Alex?
Finding the answer to what lies, what happens after we die, if anything. I believe that when, obviously, I know you believe that when we die, but when we die, I believe that our bodies die, but our spirit lives on. And I'm not saying we all go up to heaven and we all do the, dance around the merry bush or whatever you want to do up there. But but the thing is, I don't really know what happens. I believe in ghosts. I believe that spirits stay around on Earth, etc., etc. But why or how, I don't know, and that's what I'm trying to find out. If that makes sense.
No, and I think that's a commonality between most people involved in the paranormal, is that they are very in touch with how fragile we are as living beings, and they do want that proof of what happens when we die. And I think it's just a romantic notion. I think it's nicer to believe that we are going to be able to talk to people or see our loved ones again when we die. I think, personally for myself, knowing how fragile existence is, that it makes me embrace my life more now versus waiting to spend time with a loved one that I've already lost.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this about spirits. Why would a spirit have the free time to talk via a Ouija board at a slumber party versus letting their dead relatives know where their corpse is when they've been murdered?
Who knows?
It's just it's a very selfish thing to think that these spirits have this time to talk to you via Ouija board.
Well, I personally want to know what sort of spirit hangs around at girls' slumber parties.
Oh, that's one of the number one reasons why people get Ouija boards, is to entertain each other at parties.
But that's the thing. Obviously, if you're using,
I've been there, to one of those parties, and what I can say is that, at the expense of trying to find some type of thrill factor or whatever, nobody has ever been prepared for the fact that if you put down a Ouija board, at least at any of the slumber parties that I've ever been to, if you put down a Ouija board, that we are going to be able to communicate with something that has gone beyond us. It's never happened. Literally, the 7th and 8th grade slumber parties when you're doing light as a feather, stiff as a board, and we're trying to talk to Elvis in my best friend's backyard. It's never happened. And so I think you get to this point when you become a paranormal investigator, you walk this very fine line of, is this a way that I communicate, or is this a way that I feel like people are going to look at it like it's utter bullshit, and I'm going to be ridiculed for the type of stuff that I encounter in this. And that's why in the paranormal investigating that I do, I've never pulled out a Ouija board. I'm not opposed to it, because I think if you go into a location, whether it's with a Ouija board, a digital recorder, any type of investigative type equipment that you take into a location, what it all boils down to is the fact that you are trying to communicate with something that you don't understand, that you don't know, and you don't know how they are going to respond to you. So whether or not I take in a Ouija board and a planchette, or I take in a digital recorder, none of that makes any difference to me. Because to me, it's all the same. It's all that you are trying to communicate with something that's on a different frequency that you don't understand.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I personally, I will use any tool that's available to me, you know, and whether it be a Ouija board or a K2 meter or, you know, an Ovulus or whatever, you know, I just use what's best for me. And the funny thing is, sometimes you get evidence with one item at a location, and you go to another location and you get evidence with a different device. And then if you go back to the same location beforehand, all of a sudden it's swapped around. So it's weird how things change from location to location. But you know, I get where you're coming from, Calvin. But I'm swinging towards more of the fact that I think with Ouija boards, I think for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. And obviously, girls using them at a slumber party, maybe not. I think, again, it depends on the situation.
But the question was, why are spirits compelled to tell you via Ouija board that they were gay but not tell their name? But we also don't have spirits coming through saying where their murdered corpse was so they can give their parents rest, you know, because now they have closure.
I don't know, but some people, you know, claim to have got information like that through a Ouija board. Some people claim to have got information without using a Ouija board because they're a psychic or a medium. I mean, there's been loads of... I mean, I'm friends with some people that have done it, but there's been loads of mediums and psychics who have helped police officers and stuff solve crimes, as an example. I mean, I'm friends with a Canadian man who's done it plenty of times, and he's written a book about it. I honestly think, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of, let's say, false prophets and obviously a lot of people that aren't. And I think with, like I said, basically it's the same thing with a Ouija board. Some people it works, some people it doesn't. And I think it's down to I think it's down to how in touch with the spirit world someone is when they're using it.
To argue it's how susceptible that person is to the suggestion that Ouija board is going to work.
Okay, so I have two questions here. Two very similar questions from the same people, Lee Pattinson and Kimberly Farrell. They're asking about your opinions on EVPs. So if you go into a location and you get an EVP, what do you think you're encountering there?
Did we talk about Laurel and Yanny on your show, or was that a different show that we talked about it?
I don't think we did.
So, Laurel and Yanny was a thing that was going around the internet for a little bit, where depending on your ear, you would hear a different frequency of the same sound, and you would hear it either say Laurel or Yanny.
Like
Now,
me.
exactly, and I do think that's what a lot of EVPs are. There's just way too much room for error and for deciphering of what that is. And you can pick up sound from so many different things. I've heard reports of people picking up an EVP that was actually a transmission from a aircraft control tower and things like that.
Yeah,
You can
we've had that. We've had that happen before when we've been using a SB7, where we we ended up somehow tuning into a local taxi rank. I don't know why. But we knew it. We didn't think this person's going to 31 East Drive. No, it's a taxi.
Yeah, it's just too fallible to me. I think it's got too much room for error for EVPs.
I mean, the SB7 has worked once for us, where we got very specific things coming through that could not. I mean, obviously you can tell what's radio interference and what's not, and basically the SB7 was dead all night. We were in the middle of nowhere. There's no way we could have got what we got, and it was on an American airbase. And we were talking to a spirit. We asked what he did, and suddenly over the SB7 came Bombardier, which is kind of like a quite, for me, a specific thing to say. It's not like they just said something simple. So again, like I said, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you get good stuff, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you have to really, be logical and skeptical and really think about what's coming through and making sure that it's not radio interference or some sort of other interference that's causing you to hear something that you want to hear.
So besides the talking boards, you have a lot of stuff in your collection that I find incredibly interesting. We've got 14 minutes left in the show. So when I had you on my live show last fall, we talked about your shrunken heads and your spirit paintings.
Oh, yeah. The shrunken head's a little harder to get out right now. He's under a glass dome. But I do have a number of things that are... I'm also getting a warning from my phone that I'm at 10% battery life. So if I disappear, forgive me, please. But I'm going to go grab some of those spirit paintings right now, okay?
Yes, please do.
Definitely.
So I had Calvin on my live show, last fall, and we talked about his collection of shrunken heads and spirit paintings, which are the absolutely coolest thing. So it's basically the paintings that people who have claimed that spirits have retaken their body or have taken over their body have come over to do. And so,
that's froze.
Are you there?
There you are. Yep, you froze up for a second. So let's start with something from the UK. This is a piece by an artist named Coral Polge, and she's actually a UK-based spirit artist.
Okay. Do you know?
So she believed that she could communicate with spirits and produce their images of what they look like on paper.
And do you know any information about who she drew? So I can see it's a woman. He's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You guys are back.
Sorry, we were frozen for a second there. Who is that? Do you know anything about that woman?
Yeah, she's actually very prolific. She's one of the most prolific spirit artists there is out there.
No, I mean, do you know anything about the woman that she drew in the picture?
Oh, no, that I don't know. I know I only got the piece with her signature and everything on it, so I know it was by Coral. I don't know anything about, if this was a case or anything like that.
And is that one of your favourite drawings?
showing there. Are you there? Sorry, we're getting a frozen feed right there.
Well, while he's frozen, if you're a regular watcher of the show, I can hear noises.
Alex, are you there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
I can hear you. Calvin is completely frozen at the moment.
But I can hear noises.
Your voices as well. I don't know what's happening right now. Calvin, are you there? Okay, so I think we lost him, at least momentarily. He was talking about, he just went offline. I'm not 100% sure what just happened. So, Alex.
Right, there he is.
There you are. Calvin, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We lost your visual totally right there.
Yeah, I just had to run upstairs and plug my phone in. I was at 1%. I think that's why we were losing signal.
Oh my gosh. So we sucked the life out of all the batteries that you owned. Sorry, that's what we typically do.
Just so you know, Calvin, we don't have video at the moment on your end.
That's okay. I'm seeing if once the battery life kicks in a little bit more.
Okay,
hey!
no worries.
There you are.
There we are.
So let's talk about in the last few minutes that we have on here. Okay, we were talking about spirit paintings. So explain to everyone the premise behind spirit paintings, where they come from, and how many of them that you have.
So spirit art has been around for just about as long as spirit communication has. Essentially, what it is a psychic medium of some sort would either go into a trance or communicate with a spirit, and they would either draw the image that was coming through, or in some cases they would insist that the art itself was created by the spirit.
Okay. I mean, I've known a few people that have sort of done spiritual artwork before, where they've drawn someone that they can see, and it is quite incredible. Although, you know, obviously I don't know if they're actually drawing someone or not, because I'm not a psychic, but it is pretty incredible what they're doing. I mean, the drawing of the woman you showed just now, is that one of your favourite pieces of artwork?
I actually very much enjoy Coral Polge. I think she's one of the best spirit artists because she just has a great ability to draw. It's not one of my favorites. One of my favorites is actually supposedly created by a spirit in complete darkness on a piece of slate. And I love that one very much. It's a Native American.
That's awesome. I love Native American
So
stuff.
I want to ask a question. If you don't believe in, how do I say this? If you don't believe in life after this, and you believe that everything that we have is right here, then how do you believe in spirits that want to communicate with us from some other type of realm? People who have died and gone on. If they communicate with us, what do you think that is that we're talking with?
Yourself.
How?
How? I think it's the romantic notion that you want to believe what you're experiencing is communicating with the other person. Annie, do you know what schizophrenia is?
I do, absolutely.
I don't.
Right.
Sharp, I do. Sharp. I don't know what it is.
Exactly. Now, granted, that's a very severe case of what the brain is capable of doing, but our brain is capable of convincing us of so many things. Just the simple fact of recalling a memory and telling the story to somebody else changes that memory a little bit every time you do it. So that story about communication with a spirit, it's going to change every time you retell that story.
Okay.
So if my loved one has passed away, and I feel like they are attempting to communicate with me in some form or fashion, do you think I'm crazy? Or do you think it's something that my brain is creating out of ability to find comfort in what we're looking for?
I wouldn't say crazy. I think crazy is a very hurtful, derogatory term. But do I think you are capable of convincing yourself through an act of mourning? Yes, very much so.
What about someone who very rarely experiences something like paranormal, but suddenly has something happen to them, but they're not mourning anyone. It's just suddenly something happens, like that they can't explain.
So I'm going to give you a very, very good example of something I experience regularly with people who are going through a mourning or a loss. I tattoo for a living professionally. The number of times that people come in and tell me they've experienced a loved one who has passed on in the form of a cardinal or a butterfly is so vast it would make your head spin. There is no way that spirits can take the form of cardinals that many times or take the form of butterflies that many times to come back and communicate with somebody. It's just not a reality.
I personally don't believe that. You know, I personally don't think a spirit will come back and show themselves as a butterfly. That's not something I personally believe in.
Right, but to the people who do believe it, it's just as convincing as your Ouija board experience. You know, and that's the funny thing about the paranormal is two people can believe in it, and they can both still have completely vast different things. Where when it comes to science, science is one answer and one answer only.
So if you have experienced something that you feel is a paranormal experience, paranormal phenomena, what do you think you have experienced that falls into that category? Something that you could not explain away as a psychomotor reflex of something that we're doing. Have you experienced anything that you think is truly paranormal?
Nothing that can't be explained with coincidence.
Okay. I think, here's the thing, right? Obviously, I believe in spirits, but I'm skeptical. And I think it's important for all paranormal investigators or just paranormal enthusiasts to listen to both sides of the story. I think it's important that we talk to people like Calvin because it keeps us grounded. It keeps us, thinking about the science behind it. It keeps us thinking about reasonable explanations of things that we experience, because otherwise we're all going to be running around thinking everything's a bloody ghost, and it's not.
That's right.
I know people are going to be watching this thinking, but that's against everything that I believe in. But you have to listen to both sides of the story, and whether you agree with what Calvin says or not, we have to listen to it. If you want to be a paranormal investigator, you have to listen to it. You have to listen to both sides of the argument, and this is why it's important. And that's why I said I've got nothing against what Calvin's saying. I might not agree with all of it, but it's important to listen to his opinion for me personally.
Just much as it's important for me to take a walk in your shoes too,
Yeah.
That's how I go out there and I do the things that I do with
I personally don't go into a location thinking, right, this place is haunted, I'm going to experience it. I've gone to locations which are meant to be some of the most haunted places in the UK, and I'm thinking, and I left them thinking, that's a load of bullshit. They're not haunted at all. Like, I've literally nothing happened, and nothing to make me even consider that the place is possibly haunted. I've been to 30 East Drive, the Black Monk House, and experienced something, but not enough for me to say, yeah, that's haunted. I'm not saying from a paranormal perspective that it's not haunted, but for me it wasn't. I've been to another location which is well known in the UK called The Cage, and again, nothing happened for me there. And I've been to possibly one of the most renowned locations in the world, the Ancient Ram Inn. Got a lot of evidence there, but no way on earth would I say it's as bad as everyone thinks it is, from my personal opinion. And I've gone to other locations and got amazing evidence that people have never even heard of before. But then again, I've been to there's one location where we've got some of the best evidence I've ever captured, and I've investigated this place like 8 times, and probably 3 out of those 8 times we've got decent stuff. I mean, we've been there and nothing's happened whatsoever. So it's a really weird, paranormal investigating is really weird. It can be very boring, nothing can happen, and then suddenly a load of stuff happens and you just can't explain it. And I think that's important. I think we all have to keep a level head, and we all have to listen to people like you, and so we learn and we realise that, you know, we have to do more to prove the existence of spirits and things like that. But one thing I do want to ask you, Calvin, and I've been asked this question myself, and my answer was actually not ghosts. Do you believe in, obviously you don't believe in ghosts, I think we've already covered that, but do you believe in UFOs and aliens?
110%. There is life on other planets. 100%. You know, there's no question about that. Whether they're coming to Earth and ripping our cows apart and sticking things up people's butts, that I believe is a fallacy.
That's a shame. I was looking forward to that happening to me.
That's disappointing. Sorry. No, I think we all believe in extraterrestrial life forms, even if it means, you know, that ghosts may or may not exist on this plane. So
here's the thing. I'm a ghost hunter, but my answer was, you know, if I had to choose, I'd say aliens and UFOs, because if you took the Milky Way galaxy and turned it into a grain of sand, that the rest of the universe would be the beach. That's how small our Milky Way galaxy is. And then obviously inside of that you've got our solar system, and inside of that you've got Earth, inside of that you've got your country, your town. I mean, so that's how irrelevant we all are in this universe. And there's things on this planet that, you know, we haven't even discovered yet. So who's to say? I mean, think about how massive that is. We can't physically comprehend how massive the universe is, so there has to be extraterrestrial life. But yeah, not everyone who's experienced something on this planet from a UFO or whatever is necessarily an actual UFO. So again, I agree with you on that. Before we go, Calvin, I just want to check something with you. You're going to be coming to the UK, aren't you, in November?
I am.
Obviously, you're going to be at Sage Con.
So excited, actually.
I think
looks like an absolutely amazing event that MJ's put together.
I was going to come, but it turns out that my wife is probably going to give birth the week beforehand.
Congrats!
I know. It was never meant to happen, but it happened. By that I mean we didn't think it was going to happen. We didn't think it was possible. But don't worry about that. It's not about me. So what? When you come over to Sage, what items are you going to be bringing with you?
Oh, that's top secret. The only way you're going to see is if you buy ride.
Oh, but I can't go.
Oh, I know. I'll email you and I'll show you some pictures after I get there. How's that?
I just spat all over my laptop. So, but I'm drinking aloe vera water, and a bit of aloe vera just came out and when it looked like a bogey. Sorry. But no, I was actually looking forward because I love really weird stuff, and I was looking forward to seeing your weird stuff, Calvin.
Yeah, I'm definitely bringing some weird things that people are going to be able to take pictures with and hold and experience for themselves. Some exceedingly rare items of things that might not even be in the UK. So I say almost because I never would have enough money to buy it. I almost bought a scientific skeleton thing, but it was actually it was actually the skeleton of a real person. So if you ever get a chance to, if when you're in the UK, if you ever get a chance to go to Hastings, where Aleister Crowley died, in the Old Town part, there's like a curio little shop, and they've got some really, really cool stuff. They've got like
loads of dead animals and stuff, obviously, and then but they've
Do you
got like
remember what the name of the shop was?
I can't remember, but it's the only one down there, and I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But Hastings is incredible.
Friends of yeah, you owned an oddity shop called Pandora's Box, and I'm wondering if that's the right one.
I mean, I'm sure there's more than one. Unless it's in Hastings. If it's in Hastings, it probably is because that's the only one I saw. So, Karen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And sorry you had some issues with your phone earlier on as well.
Yeah, no, that's my apology. I'm sorry I messed up the video feed, and I couldn't.
It's okay. It's not a problem. These things happen. We've done live investigations where the camera suddenly froze for no reason, and technology. What would who would want it? Annie, thank you for co-hosting with me. Thank you for being more intelligent than me. And,
okay. I love you guys.
And
it's always a pleasure.
and showing me up with your intelligence and your hat that looks better than mine.
Thank you. It's my Easter bonnet. You're welcome.
And I was going to wear the same colour
that
lips.
beard, Annie? Maybe we'll grow the beard out for the
I'm working on the beard. You guys just stay tuned. In a couple of weeks, it's going to happen.
And luckily, I chose not to wear lipstick because otherwise we'd be wearing the same type. So yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in. Next week, Greg will be hosting with me, and we'll have Heather Larson on the show. Same time next week. Thank you, Calvin. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Take care.